it's really hard to believe, but the high school football regular season is winding down. Gary Lloyd, Kyle Parmley, the Under the Lights High School Football Podcast. Um, Gary, I looked at the schedule last week and could not believe that there's only a few weeks left. How did we get here so fast?
Well, it goes fast every year, but I know that it's getting to be that region crunch time of the year. When I end up with a Hall's throat lozenge in my mouth. Little bit of the under the weather begins, but it's the time of the year where all of us have to push through just a little bit harder. So, excited to see these last few weeks and how things turn out in all the regions that we cover.
Yeah, no, I woke up this morning kind of felt a little off, and I was like, nope, there is no time for that. Let's get to it. Got to push through. So here's what we're going to do on this show. We're going to talk about a few games from last week. I'm going to look ahead to a few this week, and then we're going to do a dive into some of the regions, kind of break down some playoff scenarios for you. There's a lot still to be determined, and a lot of that is going to come from this upcoming week. So, Gary, last week you saw probably the best game of the week. Helena beats Briarwood 28-24. We knew this was going to be a game that was going to be big time in terms of that region title, Class 6A Region 3. It sounds like you saw a pretty good one out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can classify it as the best game of the week. I think I would classify it maybe as the most competitive game of the week because for a lot of the game, it was ugly. I was talking with some people at halftime, like, hey, how do you know how halftime goes? People are asking you for stats. How did this guy do? How did that guy do?
Sure.
And I'm looking at these stats and I was like, ugh, like this was an ugly half, but the half had everything. Briarwood blocks a punt on Helena's opening drive and then scores a play or a few plays later. It had turnovers, fumbles, interceptions. We had everything in that first half. And it was just wild. And then the second half wasn't much different. We still had interceptions. We had costly turnovers. It was ugly. But my takeaways were that Helena running game with Jordan Washington. I mean, they just kept leaning on him. That's your bell cow. That's your strength. He ends up carrying the ball 39 times in the game. Goes over 200 yards. I think 202 yards. And he kind of did it all for them. It just kind of wore down that Briarwood defensive front. And now that Briarwood defensive front, if you're just a box score looker, you would say, oh, he ran wild on them. Absolutely not. They bottled him up a lot, especially in the first half. I think maybe with some of the turnovers that happened throughout the game, and Helena, I think maybe threw the ball twice in the entire second half. They just got worn down, but the Briarwood defensive front really, you mentioned it last week. Those were the guys you were looking at. And you were right. They were really getting after it. I think on the offensive side of the ball for Briarwood, they were without Will Clark, who had gotten hurt the previous week, and then early in this game, Luke Reynolds went down with an injury. Not sure exactly what happened, but he had already had 4 carries for 26 yards early. He looked dynamic and like he was going to be a real factor. So they had to rely on Cooper Higgins back there. And, he's just a different kind of back compared to a Will Clark, compared to a Luke Reynolds. But they threw the ball well. They hit some big plays, 65-yard touchdown pass to Ben McNulty. They ran late in the game. They ran a halfback pass from Cooper Higgins trying to get McNulty, and it just off his fingertips. It was right in front of me. That might have sealed the deal, and that came after a Helena costly fumble when they were just trying to salt away the game. So I don't know that I would call it the best game in terms of like the way the teams played, but it was certainly a hard fought, try to overcome your mistakes, competitive game. And I came away really impressed with Briarwood going into a hostile environment. Your region supremacy was on the line. They're dealing with injuries. and they turned the ball over, and they still just kept coming back. So this Briarwood team still has a whole lot to play for. That 2 seed out of that region is still up for grabs, and they've got to take care of business. And that's a team that if I'm in 6A, I don't want to face them in the playoffs. So came away impressed with them, and came away impressed with Helena too. That they just kept leaning on what they do well, and they won out in the end.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got to see that Briarwood defensive line up close and personal. I knew they'd be a factor in that game, and they gave them a chance. So tough loss for the Lions, but I think there's still a lot to look forward to for that group. The game that I was at did not have the same competitive nature. Unfortunately, Thompson runs past Hewitt-Trussville 40-14. Plain and simple, like Hewitt-Trussville just they didn't have it on Friday night on either side of the ball. Thompson's offense had an explosive first half, but Hewitt-Trussville had put together a drive late in the second quarter. They got down to the 1 yard line and they fumbled a handoff. And that would have made it a 10-point game at the half. You're thinking, all right, we're still in it. Instead, they go down 17 at the break, and it was over from there. You could really tell after the game. Head coach Josh Lloyd was really disappointed. Like, you get beat by teams like this that are just superior to you. But I don't think he felt like that this time around. Like, Hewitt-Trussville's defense had been nothing shy of dominant for the past month. Now, granted, Thompson is a huge step up in competition compared to what they had faced. But Hewitt didn't tackle. They weren't in position. The defense was just not – they didn't play well on Friday night. And the offense was unable to keep up against the Thompson defense that we know how solid and stout they are. So I don't know how else to describe it other than Hewitt-Trussville just fell flat on Friday night. It was a tough one for them, but the thing about Region 3 is you gotta pick yourself up quick and get right after it again this upcoming week.
Yeah. Was there any did you get any feel of why they fell flat? Because if there is ever a game to really get up for, I can't remember if it was homecoming or not at Hewitt, but we've talked about it all year about you've already gotten the win at Hoover, you got that monkey off your back, you get Thompson at home, you're playing well, they're obviously playing well, they're Thompson, and to have so many self-inflicted wounds, and I know Thompson had a lot to do with a lot in that game, but to not put your best foot forward, that surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the line of scrimmage, I think, on both sides of the ball. Like Hewitt-Trussville, I mean, we saw Clay-Chalkville's offensive line able to impose their will against Thompson and run the ball. Hewitt-Trussville couldn't run the ball, and that forced them into a one-dimensional offense where it was throw, and they had limited success moving the ball, but it was very difficult. And then, Jacob Serena went down, and that kind of put another damper on things. It was a tough night. I mean, they just didn't have it. Tough night for the Huskies. They'll get a shot at Vestavia, a really big game right on the heels of that disappointment last week. So you can look at that one of two ways. You can look at it as, how do we get back up after that? Or it's, hey, we get to wipe the slate clean and have another chance at things this upcoming week.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, when we talked about last week, we talked so much about or I say I know I said it a lot about hey, is this the blueprint maybe to knocking off Thompson? Well, what maybe I didn't quite consider or say enough was Thompson learned from that and said, we're mad and we're going to go take it out on our next opponent. And they did.
Yeah, they definitely did. So we'll see how both teams respond from that. Let's run through a few other scores from last week to put a bow on that. Vestavia Hills gets past Chelsea 45-21. The Rebels offense, really impressive in that one. Hoover beats Oak Mountain 62-14. The Bucks finally break that losing streak. That is a nice win for them against an outmanned opponent. Spain Park, impressive on the road, takes care of Tuscaloosa County 35-14. That kind of keeps them in the hunt in Region 3. And Pleasant Grove beats John Carroll 37-12. John Carroll kept that game close into the third quarter, which is honestly more than I thought they would. So the Cavs first lost, but in the end, not anything unexpected and nothing to feel too down about. But that does it for Week 7. Gary, let's take a look at a couple of Week 8 games before we really dive into some region play or region standings. The game that I'll be at Friday, we mentioned it a little bit already, Hewitt-Trussville paying a visit to Vestavia Hills. This is a game that is likely going to determine the number 2 seed in the region, which gets you a first-round home playoff game at least. So big game here. We mentioned Hewitt's got to get back up. Vestavia's been really impressive since they lost to Thompson early in the season. If you look at the score lines for this matchup, it's like 40-something to 30-something every game in recent years. And I'm going to sit here and tell you today, I think this one is going to be just like that. I think we are in for a track meet on Friday night. Gary, what would you set the over-under at in terms of combined carries for Hewitt-Trussville quarterback Peyton Floyd and Vestavia Hills quarterback John Paul Head? Because that's going to be a big number, I think.
54.5.
I was thinking somewhere in the 50s. I mean, I think if the game is close, I think John Paul Head runs it 30-ish times. And I think Peyton Floyd runs it 20-ish times.
Yeah, because, I mean, Vestavia got the passing game working pretty good last week against Chelsea. Threw a lot to Keon Richardson, and, William Tonsmeyer kind of did the work running the ball. And that just means they're saving John Paul Head a little bit for this week in a game that they really want to get. So I think he's going to have fresh legs and be ready to run it whenever Coach Robert Evans asks.
Yeah, this feels like a which team has the ball last type of game. And because I feel that way, this will almost assuredly be a 14-13 type of ball game.
Oh, my gosh. If this game's 14-13, that would be wildly surprising. I don't think there's any chance of that. I think what you need to make sure you do is in your backpack or whatever, you take a water into the game, just make sure you've got a little liquid IV packet, mix it in your water, get some good energy because you're going to be up and down those sidelines.
Yep, running up and down. Let's see. Gary, the game you'll be at, Mountain Brook hosting Parker. This game, more than likely, decides the region title. This is a Parker program that, you can say whatever you want, but this is not the same Parker team that has been on the field the last few years. There's been an influx of talent there, and they've been playing like it. They've been a fixture right around that 4 to 6 range in the Alabama Sports Writers Association poll all season long. So this is a Parker team that's having a great year. Mountain Brook has been really impressive the last month plus. Their season opening loss to Vestavia, we touched on it a bunch, but they've taken that. They've gotten a little bit better each week. Cole Gamble is going to have a big night if Mountain Brook wants to win this game. They're good enough to win this game, but they're going to have to put it all out there and play well to beat Parker.
Yeah, I feel about this game the opposite of how we talked about Hewitt-Trussville, Vestavia Hills. Like, I'll say it kind of how you did. I feel this is like a first one to 20, first one to 17 type of game, which means it'll be 41-38. But I really do. I feel like it's a ball control, long drives, don't turn the ball over, that kind of get grinded out kind of game. Maybe it comes down to a field goal. Like Parker earlier this year beat Ramsey 20-17. I could see this game going much the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Parker's just got some dudes on defense. I mean, you've got Jeremiah Beeman. He's going to Alabama. He's a DN. Jordan Crawford's a 4-star guy. Naeem Alford's a big-time corner. I mean, they've got some dudes, and that Mountain Brook offensive line, I think, is going to have a really big night. I don't pretend to know how to call plays. That's up to Coach Yeager and Brad Easley and all those guys that we know at Mountain Brook. But, like, the offensive line at Mountain Brook, year in, year out, I mean, they've been so good, like, not just physically, but, like, technically. And I wonder if we might see some different, like, pulls and misdirection type runs and stuff like that, maybe instead of just, grind it right up the middle kind of stuff, and see if they can find some space on the outside. But I think it's going to be that kind of game. Like I said, of course, it'll end up 41-38. But yeah, region title most likely on the line. Mountain Brook has dominated this series. Like I was looking the other day, they've played 6 times. Mountain Brook's won them all, and they've won them all by double digits. And this is not that kind of game. So I'm really excited to see how this one unfolds, and a really interesting color game. It's green versus purple kind of deal. It's a little different. So excited to see the Spartans for the first time this year. I haven't seen them since near the end of last year. So excited to get out to Spartan Stadium and really see how this one unfolds, because it feels like a coin flip to me.
Yeah, should be a good one. And then if Coach Kelly asks for some tips on the Mountain Brook offensive game plan, that'll be the first time he's ever needed one of our inputs. So I'm with you though. I think low scoring. It's going to be a really defense special teams type of game. Let's talk Hoover at Tuscaloosa County. Hoover beats Oak Mountain last week to set up this game that, there's a few different scenarios, but more than likely this game will be for the number 4 seed out of Region 3. And, that sounds crazy to say, but Hoover beating Oak Mountain the way they did last week, they've got to feel a lot better after just a horrible month leading up to it. So Hoover is the more talented team. They're the better team, but T County has shown this year that they're not a cellar dweller like they have been the last few years either. So taking a road trip, Hoover is. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like two teams, at least very recently, last 2 weeks, last 3 weeks kind of deal, maybe starting to trend a little bit in different directions. Like I kind of see like Hoover starting to find itself a little bit.
Yeah.
And T County maybe struggling on offense a little bit. So, it's every week is different. I think it's tough to go on the road, and especially to go so far, going all the way to Tuscaloosa County. But I kind of like Hoover to go down there and get this one done.
Yeah, I think so too. The other 2 Region 3 games, Chelsea visiting Spain Park. Spain Park needs to win that game to stay alive in the playoff hunt. Oak Mountain hosting Thompson. We kind of know how that one's going to go. Briarwood going to Calera. This will be a good bounce back game for the Lions. Homewood hosting Chilton County. Patriots are the better team. Chilton County, they can cause you some trouble if you're not ready to play. John Carroll hosting Ramsey. The Cavs, this game probably goes kind of like it did last week. And then Clay-Chalkville paying a visit to Huffman. I don't really think we need to discuss that one very much. But out of those 6, Gary, any thoughts about that slate?
Let's see. I'd set my notes down. Not really. I think Chelsea Spain Park has the potential to be a competitive game. Briarwood, with the injuries they've had on offense, like you've just got to go down to Calera and take care of business, do what you need to do, because Calera is winless, and if you want that 2 seed, you can't have a letdown week. Homewood, same kind of deal. Chilton County is obviously a better opponent, but got to take care of business there. So Ramsey at John Carroll. It'd be interesting that it's at John Carroll, but Ramsey is they're just so good. And then Clay-Chalkville Huffman, I have nothing to say.
Yeah. So that's what we've got coming in week 8. Hopefully a few of those games are really good ones. A lot on the line in a lot of these. And with that being said, let's dive into some regions. A lot of these regions, teams have about 3 games left, including this week. So let's start 7A Region 3. With Thompson's win last week, that puts them 4-0 in the region. They're more than likely going to, take the region title. They've got 3 games left. They should win those. Vestavia and Hewitt-Trussville. They're both 3-1 in the region. They play this week, likely for the 2 spot, because Vestavia, regardless, should win their last 2. Hewitt-Trussville should win their last 2. They at least be favored in both of those. So we'll see. And then we talked about Hoover T County probably being for the 4. But the one that's kind of hanging out there, Spain Park, they're 1-3 in the region, but they've already played Hoover Thompson Vestavia. So they get Chelsea this week. You think they win that one? They go to Hewitt-Trussville next week. And if somehow the Jags win that game, that sets up a very interesting scenario. I mean, that puts a lot in play when you're talking about 5 teams for 4 spots.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to get to that point, but it's hard to project it all forward. Like it feels like it's going to end up Thompson and then either Vestavia or Hewitt, and then Vestavia or Hewitt, 2 or 3, and then likely Hoover if they get by T County. But yeah, Spain Park, they've had those injuries that we've talked about a lot, but they were back healthy last week, and you saw what they did going down to Tuscaloosa County right off the bat, returning the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and they win by 3 touchdowns on the road. So, Hewitt will have to, that game is next week, but Hewitt's got to get up for that one for sure, because Spain Park, as long as they get by Chelsea this week, I mean, that's a lot on the line, and that Spain Park team will certainly come in focused and on a mission. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple weeks how that plays out, because it seems like there is the potential Spain Park could play spoiler for somebody and get them work themselves in. But I think they're on the outside looking in right now, but they still got a chance to make something happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about this is you can go so quickly. Like Hewitt-Trussville, like lay out worst case scenario here. You enter last week with a chance to beat Thompson and pretty much be in the driver's seat when it comes to the region title. Well, then you lose to Thompson. Well, now you got to face a really good Vestavia team. And then if you can't pull that one out, you lose a close one. Well, then you got to face a scrappy Spain Park team that is not going to roll over for you. And then all of a sudden, like you look up and you're like, well, now we're 3-3 in a 3-way tie in the region, and nobody wants that. Now, that's worst case scenario. It's not likely, but that's also not the craziest scenario that you've ever heard.
No. And now I'm going to offer a crazier scenario. I personally don't think this is going to happen, but looking at this, Chelsea has had some guys out, Emerson Russell specifically, who's been dealing with some injuries, missed a game. Now, if they go into Spain Park fully healthy, rested, and get that win, now I don't think they will. I think Spain Park wins that game. But if they do, your last 2, even though it's against Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville, they are at home. So, and they're also 1-3 like Spain Park. So while we're talking about scenarios, I mean, they'd have to win out, and I don't think they will. But they're still sitting there at 1-3, just like Spain Park. So it's kind of like that, that scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's like, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" Like I kind of feel that way about that. Like, hey, they've got 2 to 3 at home. Maybe they'll be back to health. They've been finding some young guys that have been productive for them in recent weeks. So you never know. You never know.
Yeah,
I know.
Probably not likely.
Probably not likely, but I want to put it out there.
Well, Region 3 will be a lot more defined after this week. We'll have a good idea about the 2, good idea about the 3, good idea about the 4, but it might not all be completely put to bed just yet. So that's that. Let's move into a couple of 6A conversations that center around our teams. Let's start in Region 3. Helena more or less has wrapped up that region unless, they pretty much wrapped up that region unless Ben Russell were to win out. But Helena's 4-0, and then you basically got 4 teams battling for the 2 through 4 seeds, 4 teams for 3 spots. Briarwood, Homewood, and Ben Russell, all 2-1 in the region. Pelham's 1-2 in the region, but they're good enough to win their last 3. Um, so I don't know. I mean, like, we talked about Briarwood. It's the same type of deal with Hewitt-Trussville. Like, you had a chance last week to kind of lock up the region more or less, and then now you're looking at, if we don't show up to play the next couple of weeks, well, then now we're in jeopardy of being on the outside looking in. So there's a lot still to be determined there, because all those 2-1, 1-2 teams, they still play each other.
Yeah, I think 6A Region 3, just standings wise, and trying to think of who might get in, who's going to be the two, who's going to have to travel, which one's the odd team out. It's just a lot more bunched up than Region 3 and 7A to me. I think I maybe said this last year. Just 6A Region 3 just was kind of wild last year. A lot of crazy games, a lot of close games. And so I think, you've mentioned chaos at times this year for 7A Region 3. I mean, I wouldn't doubt if we see a little bit in 6A Region 3. Briarwood controls its destiny, so to speak. So does Homewood. I mean, Ben Russell's right there. Now, Ben Russell, I'll say, you mentioned they have to win out. I mean, they've got Pelham at Briarwood and Helena left. That's a tough row to hoe. Pelham, like you said, at Benjamin Russell, could be a competitive game, could get that win. Pelham could win at Homewood. Pelham hosting Chilton County. That's much more favorable. I think maybe Ben Russell's got the toughest draw out of maybe all of these. Briarwood at Collier. I don't know. I think Briarwood's got the best shape. I think they're one of the 2-1s already. They're going to Calera. That's your only road game left in the region, and Calera is the worst team in the region. You got to take care of business there. Then you get Benjamin Russell and Homewood at home.
Yeah.
So I would put my lean on Briarwood to get that 2 seed. But man, past that, that's hard. That's hard to figure out or to project who might get that 4 seed and who's going to get left on the outside. I think it could be ultimately Benjamin Russell, but that's why we play him.
Yeah, it's just hard to say right now.
Yeah.
The one result that just kind of gives me so much pause is the way that Homewood beat Benjamin Russell. Like, I still don't understand that, because Ben Russell is a better team than what they put on the field that night.
Yeah.
But they've got 3 really tough games coming up, Ben Russell does. So I don't know how you slice that up. So we'll see. 5 teams for 4 playoff spots in Region 3 and 6A. So we'll see how that one shakes out. The one other caveat about Region 3, you really want to be the 2 seed here, because, yes, you get the first round home playoff game, but if you're the 3 seed, let me make sure I got this right. If you're the 3 seed, you're playing Saraland in the second round. And
that was
just in case you're wondering, you're not beating Saraland in the second round. So the 3 seed will maybe win a first round playoff game, but that's probably it. So you want to be the 2, the 4, something like that. All right, 6A Region 5. We talked about Parker and Mountain Brook. They're both unbeaten in the region. They're probably going to decide the region title this Friday night. The 3 seed right now is Mortimer Jordan. They're having a resurgent season. It's been really cool to see. They're 6-1 overall. They've only got I think they're off this week. They play Mountain Brook next week, and then they wrap up with Jackson Olin, which will be a win for them. So Mortimer Jordan is just kind of waiting on this game this week to see how it shakes out, and then they're going to give Mountain Brook their best shot next week. So these top 3 teams are really tight. I would say as of right now, Gardendale's got a pretty strong bid for the 4 seed. But Minor is a lot better than they were last year too. So the top 3, very interesting to see how that shakes out. And then the 4 and the 5, still a little bit up in the air there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game that I'm going to this week is absolutely huge. Like Parker and Mortimer Jordan, they've already played 4 region games. Mountain Brook's played just the 3.
Yep.
So like if Parker gets the win this week, let's just say Parker beats Mountain Brook at Mountain Brook. That game next week between Mountain Brook and Mortimer Jordan is for the 2 seed, right?
Yep.
I mean, they'd both be 3-1, and I don't see anyone else that could challenge that. That would pretty much lock up the region for Parker, and then Mountain Brook Mortimer Jordan would be playing for home field in the first. So, you really want to get this one done this week if you're Mountain Brook, and then like you said, that the way the Gardendale and Minor battling for that 4th spot, they play this week. That obviously makes that just a massive game. Minor at Gardendale. Then Gardendale finishes at Woodlawn. That's a win. And then they host Mountain Brook, which could be an interesting game.
Yeah.
Minor, after this week at Gardendale, they go to Parker, likely a loss. And then they get Woodlawn, likely a win. So I think that 4th spot could potentially be determined with the game this week, Gardendale Minor.
Probably so.
Yeah, so it's hard to look at Gardendale's record. I know you have some thoughts on this, that 1-5 overall, 1-2 in the region. But I don't think that record is necessarily reflective of what kind of team that is.
Gardendale's the best 1-5 team I've ever seen in my life. They they lost by 5 to James Clemens. They lost by 9 to the team out of Georgia. They got drugged by Mortimer Jordan, and that was kind of, what the heck happened there. Well, then they lose big to Parker, but Parker's really good. And then they lose to Austin, which Austin is a fringe playoff team in 7A. I mean, they've lost to 2 7A teams out of that 5. And then they finally get their first win last week against Jackson Olin. So things are setting up to where Gardendale might be finishing this season on a bit of a win streak. I think they're gonna. I mean, I think they end up like 4-6 and are a threat in the playoffs.
Yeah. Because I mean, where would they? This might be getting too far ahead, but I don't know what region they travel to. But
Region 5 was Region 8 in the playoffs in the first round, and that's Region 7 and Region 8 up north. There's a couple good teams up there, but outside of that, it's not too intimidating. So
yeah. So you might have a 4-6 team go on the road and get a playoff win potentially.
Yeah, it's possible.
Can't look at that record with him.
Yeah, no doubt. Class 5A, Region 5. That'll be the last one we need to talk about here. We've talked so much about John Carroll this year, and look, I know head coach Will Merritt is probably not watching our podcast the last 2 weeks because we're just dismissing them against Pleasant Grove and Ramsey, and he can't feed his team that, obviously. So, however, you come out of the Ramsey game this week, you'll be sitting at 3-2 in the region, and you've got 2 region games left. John Carroll goes on the road to Jasper next week. Jasper is not a good football team, and John Carroll should beat them. And if and when John Carroll beats Jasper next week, that will lock the Cavs into the playoffs for the first time since 2009. Ramsey and Pleasant Grove are the top 2 teams in the region, and then you've got John Carroll, Winona, and Fairfield all in that 3-4-5, right close with each other. Cavs have already got the win over Fairfield, so that's a big deal. And then John Carroll and Winona will play each other the last region game coming up in, 2 weeks from now. So that game has the potential to be the determinant for the 3-4 spots. But Fairfield and Winona play each other next week, and that could kind of throw a wrench into things if Fairfield were to take down Winona. So we'll see. But the one thing I do feel good about, I think John Carroll will lock themselves into the playoffs with a win next week.
Yeah, I couldn't have said anything different. That's how I feel about it too. I mean, I don't want to dismiss them against Ramsey. I just think Ramsey, regardless of the game being at John Carroll, Ramsey's just a different animal in 5A. I know John Carroll will compete. Like that game at Pleasant Grove last week. That game was 13-6 at one point. It just took kind of the wheels falling off in the fourth quarter to get away a little bit. So like that ultimate score didn't really reflect how the whole game transpired. But I think they're going to end up 3-2, and then at Jasper, any road game in region is tough, but Jasper's just not very good. So you have to take you can't have a letdown there, and then you lock into the playoffs, and you can't rest on your laurels there. Like, you still, regardless of if you're the 3 or the 4, you've got to travel, but you want to win and be the 3. You want to keep winning. So I think that Winona at Fairfield game next week is really interesting. And depending on how that goes, that John Carroll Winona game could be interesting. But like you, I feel like in a week or so we'll be talking about John Carroll earning a playoff spot for the first time since you were in like 4th grade, something like that.
Let's see, 2009 football season, I would have been a junior in high school. So yeah, it's been a while. I think I think me and Will Mayer, we might be the same graduating class. So he was a football player at John Carroll the last time they made the playoffs.
I'm older than Coach Mara. I'm just kidding, Coach.
Yeah, Coach, that's a dig at your age, apparently.
That's dig at mine.
Well,
Yeesh.
The thing about, so if John Carroll gets the 3 or the 4 seed, they would be traveling to Region 8 in 5A is a little bit still up in the air, but Russellville and Fairview seem to be the top 2 teams right now. And, both of those teams, I think on paper, are probably better than John Carroll, probably have a little more depth. But I'm not counting this John Carroll, this iteration of this program out based on what we've seen so far.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So that's that. We will know a ton more after this week's slate of games. It's really exciting to see what the possibilities that still exist. I meant to tease this earlier, but I'll go ahead and tell you, a couple weeks ago I mentioned that I had a good playoff story when we started talking about scenarios. Let me take you back to 2016. If you want to really dig and do the research, you might can figure it out. But I'll just tell you, Class 7A Region 3, I think we were down to maybe this point, maybe a week later in the season. And I covered a game and wrote a story about so-and-so team has been eliminated from the playoffs. And they had. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they had been eliminated from the playoffs. They weren't great anyways, but they had been eliminated. And it was disappointing. Well, Monday morning, I get to the office. I have an email from a parent telling me that I should be much more careful about the things that I write because the players and the people in the community read it and take it to heart, and that I needed to be more thorough. And what this parent had done is outlined a scenario where this team would have been able to make the playoffs in some crazy 4-way tie for 4th in the region. And I will give this parent credit in the sense that they were right. This is a scenario that I had not considered. You want to know why I had not considered it?
Why is that?
Because over the last 3 weeks of region play, Huffman would have had to beat Hoover, Thompson, and Mountain Brook.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Wow.
And yeah, I'll admit that I did not calculate that one.
You in this podcast, when you put this all together, you need to insert Kevin Garnett 2008 going, anything's possible.
I mean, now granted, Huffman they had a solid team that year, but come on. Beating Hoover, Thompson, and Mountain Brook. There is absolutely no way. And you better believe they did not beat any of them, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I wonder what the mathematical chances were, 0.00002% or something.
I mean, it was just, come on. So that would have been my first fall here at Starnes Media. So I learned then, our buddies, Alec Etheridge and Andrew Simonson over at Shelby County Reporter, they put their predictions column out every week, and I've just never wanted that smoke. Just have never wanted it.
Yeah, I hear from coaches all the time talking about, shout
Me
out
too.
Alec,
Me
picking
too.
us to lose again.
Every time I show up on a sideline on Friday night, I hear, "What was your prediction?" And I'm like, "I didn't make one. There's a reason you didn't see it."
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well,
looks.
hey, and I will say this: Clay-Chalkville next week. We know what they're going to do this week against
Mhm.
Huffman. But talking about region stuff, Oxford, I believe, is off this week, and then Clay-Chalkville at Oxford next week in 6A Region 6. Both teams undefeated in region. That'll be a big one.
Yeah, be a good game. Clay's better than Oxford, though.
I was going to say, I did not get the reaction I thought I would. You were like, no chance.
Well, Clay-Chalkville's going to win that region pretty easily. So,
Okay.
all right, Gary, we are recording this on the day of Game 3 of the National League Division Series. So, depending on whether you watch this on Wednesday afternoon or Friday morning, the Braves could be on to the next round. They could be eliminated. They could be setting up for a Game 5 on Saturday. We don't really know. But I'm just here to let everybody know that, Gary's had his Braves sweatshirt on. NBA starting up, the NHL, the New York Islanders getting ready to make a Stanley Cup run this year. All kinds of things going on. The
Celtics are going to get that championship this year.
the Suns they got the big three. They're ready.
Oh, no, there's only one ball, Kyle. They can only play with one ball.
And the chances are somebody that you've never heard of will be the Suns' fifth starter. Like, it's just going to be kind of weird. But then also Kansas football is awesome. They destroyed old Gus Malzahn's team with a backup quarterback last Saturday. But
Yeah, they did.
having all that being said, the next 2 days will be high stress. Can't really focus on anything else at work. Go Braves.
I'm just glad that, let's see, what's today? We're recording this on Wednesday. When is game 4
Game
of the
4,
NLDS?
Game 4 is Thursday. Game 5 will be Saturday.
I love that the MLB, the only time I'm going to give you some credit, Rob Manfred, thank you for working that around our Friday night schedule so that we don't have to be out there following the game, have an iPad on the sideline, that kind of thing. So I'm glad that it won't be Friday, but I already can't calm my nerves. It's too much. It's just I hate October, man. I love October, but I hate October. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I absolutely understand what you mean. Before we go, I was trying to look. I think if the Braves were to make it to the NLCS, they would absolutely be playing next Friday. So, yeah.
I might be unavailable next Friday.
Yeah, I might be sick next Friday if the Braves make it to the NLCS. But all right.
This is the open call for freelance writers.
Yeah, if you've ever dreamt of covering a high school football game, Starnes Media will be short a few men next Friday, hopefully. But a lot of big games this Friday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Gary, thanks for hopping on today. Be sure to follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Kyle Parmley. Gary is at Gary A. Lloyd. All kinds of content all week. If you have any burning questions for us as well, feel free to shoot them out to us. But yeah, that's all I got, Gary.
Go Braves.
Go Braves.